acting different on people on camera and they acting diff.
So I've actually recorded this video a couple of times, and I necessarily haven't been able to find the right words to explain the situation other than it being really tough for the Lakers. So if you understand by the caption, we're going to talk about Russell Westbrook. Last week we talked about the Kevin Durant situation and how it hasn't panned out. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to break this up into two segments. The first segment is going to be about why the Lakers should keep Russ. The second segment is going to be about why the Lakers shouldn't keep Russ. And then we're just going to talk about my solutions and what I think is better for the organization. If we're going to talk about why the Lakers should keep Russell Westbrook, remember that this video is about what is best for the Lakers organization. Am I recording? I am. That doesn't necessarily mean what's best for LeBron's legacy. So if the Lakers were to keep Russell Westbrook, these would be the reason. The first one being the Lakers just don't want to give up their assets for the future. So right now, I think in the back of Jeanie Buss's mind and everybody at the Lakers organization, they're kind of looking at the landscape of the league and they're understanding one thing. A lot of young players are locked up on their team. So you're talking about players like Devin Booker, players like Karl Anthony Towns, Giannis. Really young prospects are locked up on their teams for a long time, going into that 2026, 27, 28, 29 time period 4 years from now. The second thing is that the Lakers don't want to give up those two picks of 2029 and 2027. Now, if you follow basketball as much as I do, you've heard of Nick Wright. And Nick Wright's argument to the Lakers on why they should trade Russ instead of keeping him and letting go of those two picks is that why do the Lakers think that they're going to be bad? Because if I'm the Lakers and I'm in LA, what gives me the idea after all the success we've had, why don't we think we can sign a major free agent? Well, the answer is just there aren't going to be major free agents available. There'll probably be like one or two guys, but realistically, unless another disgruntled player comes out and says, I want to leave, the Lakers don't see a path of who they can sign in 2025, 2026, so that those 2027 picks and 2029 picks aren't as valuable, so that they don't get into the lottery. And then remember, it's only one more season. It's only another 82 games. It'll be a wash of a season, and Laker fans aren't necessarily used to losing, but that opens up so many more possibilities that we can do down the line. And if I'm management and I'm Jeanie Buss and I'm saying, if we cannot get a player of high enough caliber from a Russell Westbrook trade that is not named Kyrie Irving or is not named, I don't know, at least an all-star from last season, should we really do this deal? Should we really do this deal? Because if I get, for example, a Miles Turner or a Buddy Hield or, I don't know, an Eric Gordon back in a trade, those contracts realistically are only going to last maybe 2 to 3 seasons. So by 2025, the Lakers organization is going to be looking at themselves and saying, well, we don't have any assets. We have the Pelicans pick swaps and they're making the playoffs, and that means the picks we're getting isn't going into the lottery. We might as well just keep Russell Westbrook because we don't get a player back that makes sense. The Kyrie Irving trade makes sense for the Lakers for this one reason. If they trade Westbrook for Kyrie, then there is a chance, to be honest with you, a high chance that Kyrie Irving is going to re-sign long-term with the Lakers. And I don't think the Lakers are necessarily going to give Kyrie that game limit that he has to hit in order to get his max money. The Lakers have to look at it like this. We cannot risk our future on this trade to get off Russell Westbrook, who's only on this team for one more year, to then lose those contracts, to then be bad and not have any of those picks in our back pocket. And who knows what those picks will be. Maybe it'll be a bum. Maybe it'll be somebody good. But the thing about it is the Lakers cannot be left stranded with no all-star caliber player that makes those first round draft picks worth it. If, for example, we have Kyrie, or we're able to leverage Kyrie, or we're able to get somebody to play with Kyrie, and then down the line those picks become fairly good players, we can at least say, okay, we have an all-star caliber player. We lost a lot, but we lost a player or two that had really good potential. And then it's really hard to hit on an all-time great So the likelihood of that happening in the 2 years that the Lakers don't have those assets is a toss-up. And then let's switch gears now, and let's talk about if the Lakers should not keep. The last segment I did was, keeping Russell Westbrook. Yeah, so should not keep Russell Westbrook. Okay, if the Lakers do not keep Russell Westbrook, there's realistically 2 things or 3 things that happen here. If the Lakers shift the priority and say, you know what, forget the future. Instead, let's just focus on LeBron James' legacy, because what's best for LeBron right now is best for us. We'll get the most success, news time, TV time if we really hone in on LeBron's last 2 years, 3 years, and try to see if we can win a championship. Because that's the only reason I think the Lakers would trade. If the Lakers trade Russell Westbrook, Westbrook is getting paid $50 million. Let's call it $50 million next season. He got that contract because in OKC he accrued enough bird rights to where he can get paid an exorbitant amount of money during that max contract. So let's say they trade him. If they were to trade him, they would get maybe a Buddy Hield, Miles Turner kind of deal. Let's just say that every trade the Lakers do includes players of those caliber. Not all-star players, but middle-of-the-pack players that foundationally can help your team. Now, the reason for this is because the Lakers would still not be a championship team after those trades, but they would be a relevant team after those trades. If you notice, the Lakers aren't able to get any middle-of-the-line guys right now. So they can't get players like, I don't know, for $15, $17, $18 million because the Lakers have too much money in their top 3 guys. Russell Westbrook's getting paid $50. LeBron is getting paid $50. AD, I think, is getting paid in the lower 40s. If you notice, Lonnie Walker got paid $10 million. Thomas Bryant, I think, got paid in the neighborhood of $5 million. And then every player after that is just a minimum contract, except for THT. But THT is a rookie, so you can kind of go over the cap for him. And even then, he's not getting paid a lot of money. So the Lakers are basically landlocked to these 3 players, and they can't get anybody good, or multiple players. They can't get anybody good because they just have too much money in certain places. If you trade Westbrook, you get multiple assets back. You get 2 to 3 players back. Then you can start building a foundation for a better team, not necessarily a championship team. And then down the line, who knows what you can do to flip those kinds of contracts. Let's go back into the Warriors, for example. The Warriors asked KD if they can trade KD to the Warriors for a sign and trade. Initially, Kevin Durant was not happy about this because he didn't want it to go down in the history books that if, I got traded for D'Angelo Russell. Are you kidding me? But then the Nets organization stepped in and they said, look, KD, if we do a sign and trade, then we'll be able to get a heavily protected first round pick, which we might be able to use. I actually have to check after this and see if the Nets actually did use that heavily protected first round pick. But what I'm saying is the Warriors took D'Angelo Russell. They played with D'Angelo Russell for a year, and then they traded him again for Wiggins. And as we all know, Wiggins was not the deciding factor of the finals, but he was the second best player on the Warriors. If the Lakers get multiple players back, even if they are $15, $20 million guys, even if they are guys like Eric Gordon or Buddy Hield or Miles Bridges or maybe Seth Curry from the Nets or whatever the case may be, whatever the Lakers decide to do, you have a potential contract that can get you something better. Think about it this way. When the Nets were looking to trade for James Harden or Ben Simmons, Joe Harris, who is a player that hasn't been available all season, but the Nets could still throw that in the deal to match money. And sometimes that's just all that matters. When you're dealing with a player like Russell Westbrook, it's $150 million payment. Instead of saying, here's 3 people that totals up to $50 million that other teams can add and subtract. Say, no, you know what, he's getting paid too much. I don't want him, but I want these 2 players. Throw in a different player on a minimum contract or half the money, and then we'll just switch around the players to see what really works. The Lakers can't do that at the moment. They have to get off Russell Westbrook entirely. Get those 2 for $1, or maybe even $1 for $1, or 25 cents for 25 cents, or whatever the case may be, type players to fill out the roster. Going back into this segment, here's where we are. I personally think the Lakers should do what's best for the organization, and that's to just keep Russell Westbrook. And I'm a diehard Laker fan. I'm not too high on LeBron. I love LeBron. I respect LeBron. I've hated him all my life only because I'm a really big Kobe Bryant fan, and the comparisons were just always there for me while I was growing up. So I just grew kind of a lot of respect for LeBron, but I just never thought I'd see him in a Laker jersey. And my opinion right now has nothing to do with that personal opinion about how I feel about LeBron James. But the Lakers should do what's best for their franchise. They should keep Russell Westbrook, maybe hope for the best in terms of what happens between him, Russ, and AD. Because at the end of the day, LeBron's going to re-sign for probably another 2 years until his son gets drafted, maybe another 1-1. You just don't know who becomes available next offseason. You just don't know what move you're going to be able to make next offseason. The Lakers for example, the Lakers could have been in the run for Kevin Durant. Not likely, but let's just imagine for a second. Who's getting paid $40 million. But if the Lakers and the Nets were really trying to negotiate, there would be no discussion about KD or Russell Westbrook. But let's just talk about their contracts. And if the Nets can just say, okay, you know what, we'll just get 5 guys, 3 to 4 guys, that adds up to like $30 million, $40 million, what Russell Westbrook isn't getting paid. You have multiple players that can seem more intriguing to other teams and can get another player. And then we'll also have more assets later on down the line. And if the Lakers decide to do it, look, the Lakers have been bad. From 2013 to 2000 and what is it? When did LeBron sign? 2019, 2018? The Lakers been bad. They've been terrible. Where do you think D'Angelo Russell came from? Jordan Clarkson, Julius Randle, Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball. All of these lottery picks. They came from bad seasons with the Lakers. The Laker organization needs to stop acting like when I'm talking about the fans. Like we're all about championships. We take nothing. We've been bad. You don't want to end up in the cycle like the Knicks, for example, that jumps the gun. They jump the gun way too quick. They give up all of their assets, and then they're still wondering why they're still in the middle of the pack, because they have to be patient. We have to be patient. We won a championship. We don't need to try to jump the gun in order to win LeBron another championship, and he's not going to get there. He's not the best player in the world right now. He is one of the best players in the world, but he's not at that level as of right now. Right now, it's Giannis. And even if he were to be at that level, he only has maybe 2 years left of quality, better than everybody else basketball. Father Time is undefeated. And I'd rather be wrong saying that LeBron is going to get old and then have him have 2 great seasons after this, then be right, and then the Lakers have already given up all of their assets, and LeBron is 40 years old trying to make the best out of what we got. So that's my opinion, guys. I'm going to keep it real short. I think, look, I have a piece of paper here that's telling me, possible trades for Russell Westbrook. If I'm going down this list, let's see. Actually, let's do it together. The Suns are a no. The Grizzlies are a no. Let's take off teams at the top, because I think it's already established teams at the top don't want Russell Westbrook. The Pelicans are a maybe. The Clippers only for a buyout. The Spurs said they would do it for 2 of our picks, so that's a no. The Kings, no. I mean, who knows? Maybe OKC wants him back. I think OKC would want him back. I think that makes sense. Miami's not gonna want him back. I mean, not going to want him. I have to ask myself what teams want him. Maybe the Knicks. I think the Knicks I think the Knicks would take on that $40 million deal. The only thing is, the Knicks have one bad contract in Evan Fournier. So you know what? Maybe Evan Fournier, we could, again, this is what I'm saying. If we trade Evan Fournier, we have $18 million to pay him over the next 3 years per year. So is that worth it? And then we're going to come down to the line and say, we need to give this player who we think is going to be a great addition $40 million. And we can't do it because Evan Fournier is taking up the last $10 million that we need with his $18 million contract. So the Knicks might be a great idea. Maybe the Magic's not going to work. The Pistons, they're still in a rebuilding phase. So giving them one out of the 2 picks might be viable. We already went through the Pacers. The Rockets said they would take Russell Westbrook back, but you never know. I think Russ is stuck. I don't think anything is realistic. I think if something would have happened, it would already happened by now. Teams that are realistically going to do it: Rockets, Pacers, Knicks. That's it. That's all I got. When Rob Pelinka is saying, "Oh, I got other trades in my back pocket," I don't believe him. I think he has maybe 1 or 2 trades in his back pocket. He's really waiting on what the Kyrie Irving situation is going to be like. But then after that, I think he's just saying that in order to get teams like the Pacers, like the Knicks or Rockets. Sorry, the Knicks aren't in this. Like the Pacers, like the Rockets in this, to try to say, okay, you know what? We're just going to make the deal. I don't think Rob Pelinka has something in his back pocket. Or actually, you know what? The Hornets said that they were interested. And after what's going on with Miles Bridges, I actually wouldn't be surprised if they wanted something like that. Maybe we could get a Gordon Hayward. But again, Gordon Hayward is on that deal that he got from the Celtics. And I think it would be 2 more seasons until that deal is fully done. So is it really worth it to have another $30 million player on the team that gives you average numbers when you could just pay Russell Westbrook $50 million and call it a season? So tell me what you guys think in the comments. Like, comment, and subscribe. I'm going to be here. I'm going to be making these weekly shows. I'm going to give you guys some short clips of these stories. If you guys are here since the very end of the story, give me a like, give me a thumbs up. I appreciate you guys liking my opinion. And I'm going to do the awkward thing where I just look at you and say, I really need an outro.